So, do you all remember when Rush Limbaugh said he wanted Obama to fail? He was sitting there saying, well, yes, I mean, I don't want his liberal policies to succeed, and since I'm against his liberal policies, I want him to fail. So, Rush Limbaugh's like, who gives a fuck? Let the whole country fail, right? So, he was against him right from the get-go. And then Mitch McConnell said that Obama's going to be a one-term senator. Mitch McConnell plays the American people, or at least the Kentucky people, like they're fucking stupid, and he, succeeded. So he obstructed Obama the entire time he was in there. Kid Rock was like, we're so divided. Yeah, because of the obstruction. And then Mitch McConnell, just says coal. Kentucky loves coal. And says Kentucky loves coal. Well, you should re-elect me. Well, it turns out that there's more employees at a car wash. There's more car wash employees. People who wash cars. There's more people in the washing cars industry than there is in coal. There's more people in Arby's. There's more people at JCPenney, Dollar General. There's 105,000 workers at Dollar General than there's 50,000 workers in coal. So, 50,000, and then this guy doesn't even give a shit. Okay, so, only because there's been such a huge clamoring for, they're like, oh my gosh, yo, John Boy, what's up, yo, old JD, right? They asking me, what do I think about this whole, John Oliver, Bob Murray thing? And I think it's fucking bullshit. If the American justice system works the way it's supposed to, John Oliver's got some lawyers, so if it works the way it's supposed to, the freedom of speech, he was careful with everything he says. The only way it's libel or slander is if he said anything that was inaccurate, and he didn't say anything that was inaccurate. So my problem with the show last night was that John Oliver totally wimped out. He was like, well, my lawyer said I can't talk about this, so I'm not going to talk about it. I think it's a bad idea. I think what Trump does when he's tweeting, I don't think it's a bad idea. What you don't want is for someone to admit guilt, because an admission, once you have a confession, right, then all bets are off. That's why that one, Making of a Murderer, they were able to coerce a confession out of them, and then once, you hear that a person confessed, well, you don't even need any evidence anymore, do you? Well, that person just said that they did it. Remember that weird creepy fuck that said that he was responsible for John Benet Ramsey's death? He said he took responsibility for it when he had nothing to do with it. What a weirdo. But just, so admitting guilt, he doesn't want to do that. But I think it's good that he continues to tweet and talk about his perspective, keeps on talking to the media, because he gets his perspective out there. He keeps the story going. He gets his perspective. It's an update, so there's constant new details, so it's a developing story the more that he talks, and there's new info. So the media is looking at his perspective, which if you identify with him, then that would be good for you. And then the constant details keeping the story going, all the new info. I think it's a good idea. So John Oliver could be kicking this guy's ass the entire time. He could be kicking his ass last night and every other show. And it would be important to look at the judicial branch. There's a lot of bullshit that goes on the judicial branch. And, it would have been brave, but instead, John Oliver just obeys his lawyers. And I think I don't think it's a great strategy. There's politics. And he talks later on in the show, he mentioned that a congressman or some public official was a donkey fucker, and he even had a picture of them fucking a donkey. So he doesn't mind having a picture of a congressman dressed up as a donkey fucker. And there is the old adage, the LBJ tactic of accusing your opponent of fucking animals and just getting them to deny it. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. If you could get them to deny it, then the people are like, have you ever fucked a donkey? I have never fucked it. I've never fucked a donkey. Uh-oh. He stuttered there a little bit. See how he stumbled? I don't know if I believe him. Yeah. So, that's the LBJ thing, is just make them deny it, and then it puts doubt in people's minds. And so, this is He's willing to say that about Congressman, but not about Bob Murray. So essentially, Bob Murray wasn't able to get John Oliver to shut up, but his own lawyers did. So I think that's unfortunate. It makes me think of like Conan. Remember when Conan O'Brien got kicked off the Tonight Show, and then for like the last week or two, he's just like, making his his overlords were like evil people. So he's sitting there mocking the NBC executives like they were some, the evil cabal that they were. Well, that is what John Oliver could do. This is a coal mogul. He's been a coal mogul forever. He hasn't passed it on. He's been in this industry forever. He's got the largest private coal company in the entire universe, well, in America. And so Bob Murray is definitely the poster boy for the coal industry. You own the biggest coal company there is. There's 3,300 wage slaves who works for Bob Murray, who kisses his ass and does his bidding. Bob Murray's will is expressed through these kiss-ass sycophants, but what they're not... he hates unions, right? He hates anybody who has dignity. He also fired a whole bunch of people, 200 people before Christmas time. And let's talk about some of the details here. Okay, so on November 21st, 2007, so it happened in August, September, October. So 3 months later, they sealed the mine and it entombed the deceased miners. So that's an interesting way to think about it. 9 people had died at the Crandall mine, the Crandall something, in the Crandall Canyon mine in Utah. 9 people died there, and they sealed them in there. So basically the mountain became their grave, right? So the mountain is now their grave. I don't know. Plaintiffs tried to craft the complaint to avoid federal court. For some reason, Bob Murray doesn't want this to go into federal court. Bob Murray is a lying piece of shit. I do not believe Bob Murray. There is something interesting that he said, though. I don't believe Bob Murray. 9 people died because it was, shitty fucking conditions. The workers themselves were complaining about the not structurally sound. They were digging these, retreat mining and leaving these pillars of coal and rock and whatnot. As they kept on digging deeper and deeper into the mine, and that's just it. They kept digging deeper and deeper, and they complained about the weak structures. They complained about how deep they go and then how weak the structures were, and then all of a sudden it collapsed. They didn't complain too much. They mentioned it, and it didn't go anywhere. It didn't get to the government. The government never heard about it, but what eventually happened is it collapsed on top of them. So because the pay was so good, since the pay was so good, the workers went ahead and kept their mouths shut and endured this shitty mine. Now there's 2 reports here, and the way that John Oliver said it is right, but one report is that the collapsing mountain, the collapsing mine, caused the earthquake. There's a 3.9 on the Richter scale earthquake. So the mountain collapses on these miners, and then that causes an earthquake. That's actually kind of weird. I've never heard that. I've never heard of an explosion. I mean, they blow off, mountaintop removal, right? They blow up the mountaintops, and yet I don't ever remember any of those explosions or use of dynamite or hearing about a mine collapsing causing the earthquake. Now, it makes me wonder, maybe 4.0 isn't that big on the Richter scale, but, that could shake a lot of shit up. So, but there was a lot of government agencies that did say that it caused the earthquake, so there's some discrepancy. He says that it's not true whatsoever, but he did settle he did pay the fines, $500,000 or $1 million or so. And then he paid off the workers who had died too. So Bob Murray has this lawsuit against John Oliver, and he filed it in a West Virginia circuit court, and he's trying to avoid the federal court, which I wonder why. Is there something in West Virginia that makes it easier to sue somebody for libel or slander? Federal court, I think, would be better with defending the First Amendment, so I think it would just get tossed right out of federal court. So if they lose in West Virginia, they could go to a federal court. Right? Or no, you have to go internal. If it goes to West Virginia, then that means you'd have to appeal it in West Virginia and go to the Supreme Court. It also forces John Oliver to leave his $10 million apartment. I heard he has a $10 million apartment in New York. So some interesting things, right? He's got a $10 million apartment. Time Warner, who owns HBO, donated a whole bunch to Hillary Clinton's campaign. So, they're throwing mud on both sides. But, he's doing a comedy show. He mixed it. It was an informative piece with a lot of factual basis about what's going on. He also had some insults and he had jokes. And then he also, let's talk about the truth, okay? So, Bob Murray filed the lawsuit, and it said that John Oliver, he's accusing him of a meticulously planned attempt to assassinate the character of and reputation of Mr. Robert E. Murray and his companies. The segment is particularly egregious, the complaint argues, because Murray is one of the staunchest defenders and most ardent champions of the United States coal industry and America itself. America itself. Man, people can fucking write anything in these goddamn lawsuits. So then it said that HBO's lawyers will try to get the suit moved to federal court, especially given that West Virginia coal country state courts are unlikely to sympathize with sardonic New Yorkers. The complaint also says that it further reduced Bob Murray's already limited life expectancy. So they're making a big to-do that he's 77 years old and that he's got a respirator, and they're saying that it's already furthered. The shock, the trauma of seeing his name and reputation just being impugned, it's reducing his already limited life expectancy. Now, that's an interesting claim. I don't know if you could prove something like that. I think the only question is the statement of fact. What's true, what's not true. If everything John Oliver said was true, then I don't see how you can fuck with him. But there was that lawsuit against Bill O'Reilly, and apparently, because Bill O'Reilly lies all the time, he didn't actually have to be upheld to a standard of truth, which is fucked up. It's fucked up. Alright, so that's how libel suits. It's won by the truth. So, here's a list of things John Oliver had said about Bob Murray. He says, I'm not going to say he looks like a geriatric Dr. Evil, even though he clearly does. So, I'm not even sure what a geriatric Dr. Evil, I don't even know what geriatric is. But he does have a sinister look to him. He's like a Jabba the Hutt. He's just, I don't trust him. He's sweaty, he's disgusting, he's like Clayface. Like Clayface and Jabba the Hutt, he makes Roger Ailes look like Jennifer Aniston. Or Aaliyah Al-Mahdi. Love you, Aaliyah Al-Mahdi. I love you! So, yeah. It says, what? Oh, yeah. So, that's for next. I got a good intro for the next video. But he says, the geriatric Dr. Evil. He does look like a geriatric Dr. Evil. 9 dead at a Crandall Canyon mine in Utah in August 2017, years ago. That did happen. There was something about pensions and small checks. People returned their $3, pensions with "fuck you, Bob" or "eat shit, Bob" on it. I think that's true, too. Then you have Bob Murray's objections when he filed against a proposed rule designed to crack down on black lung disease. So a law was passed to crack down on black lung disease, but Bob Murray had some objections. Nope. I have some objections. There's a reason. So the joke was, if you're on the opposite side of black lung, that's like watching My Girl and rooting for the bees. So that's the perception. So I bet you that there were some objections filed against a black lung disease law. You would have to look at the specific language to see if he was actually, what he was actually saying specifically about it. Maintained Bob Murray mistreated families of workers who went missing when a mine he owned in Utah collapsed. Now, this one comes from the lawsuit. I did not hear John Oliver even say anything about the families of the workers, but it could be possible. And then it claimed that Bob Murray insisted that an earthquake caused the accident when government investigators found it was caused by unauthorized mining practices. And the government did. There was the Labor Department, they said that. And then the Bureau of Land Management said that retreat mining was used. So, the earthquake thing is a big fucking deal. If this, mountain collapsing, this coal mine collapsing caused a fucking earthquake, well, that's fucking newsworthy. Now, the retreat mining, he also denied that too. So the earthquake, he does say something that makes me wonder. But the retreat mining thing, Bob Murray, you're using retreat mining. You know you were. So, it fell. 6 people are dead on your watch. 6 plus the 3 rest. So 9 people died under your watch. It is your responsibility, Bob Murray. That's why you had to pay the families, and that's why you had to pay the government fine. So just because you signed a fucking settlement saying you don't have to admit guilt, if you said sorry, I think that would, I would say, well, he, tells the truth. But you can't tell the truth about anything, right? And then what a wrangled web we weave. So he said those things. The government investigators found it was, the earthquake was caused by unauthorized mining practices, or the accident did. So he said that the earthquake caused it, but then they said that it was an unauthorized mining practice. Well, and then John Oliver at the end also says about the squirrel, that a squirrel came up and talked to him. He says he didn't believe it. He said it twice. He was like, I don't believe that you actually talked to a squirrel. I don't think a squirrel would actually tell you to open up a coal mine. He just didn't think that was true. So he actually gave Bob Murray the benefit of the doubt, even though it was reported that union members had said that Bob Murray said it several times that he opened up a coal company because a squirrel walked up and told him to do it. It's a funny story. I don't know. Yeah, I guess it could be made up, right? But John Oliver said he didn't believe it. So if you're suing for libel, are you saying that it's true? Like you're saying it's the opposite? That's true too. So everything that I just read, it was absolutely true. The pensions thing, I don't know 100%. Generally, that's what they do. They'll give themselves bonus checks and then steal health care and pensions. So that's just in general the coal industry. But he didn't say specifically that's what, he was talking about Bob Murray for doing. He did say about the small checks that they got fucked over on pensions and they wrote on $3 checks instead of cashing it. They just wrote "fuck you, Bob" or "eat shit, Bob" and sent it back to him. So that's another thing the lawsuit mentions, was that not only was John Oliver making fun of him and it was slander, but he was encouraging folks to harass Bob Murray. After John Oliver's piece, his website, Bob Murray's website, was attacked several times, and it never got hacked because they eventually took the webpage down for a small spat of time because it kept getting hacked. It said that the "eat shit, Bob" was written on one of the checks, and that's exactly what was being written on Bob's messages. The company's website, it's saying hacked, but I think they're just inside the comments just writing "eat shit, Bob," so they just flooded the website with a whole bunch of "eat shit, Bob" comments. So some folks were calling Bob Murray and saying "eat shit, Bob," and then hanging up, right? So I don't think John Oliver is responsible for what people, he didn't tell people to call them or to do anything about the website. He just ran a report, "here's an asshole," and then people took it upon themselves to, repeat the same shit. So the fact that John Oliver has some influence with his audience, John Oliver did not specifically order it, so they are going above and beyond, right, the call of duty. The people who called Bob Murray up and said "eat shit," the ones who got onto his website, it said that it was attacked several times, but never hacked. So you're just writing comments on a website, I don't know. I don't know what to do about that. They shut it down, so they didn't want to hear the comments anymore, so that's one way to, stop it from happening. But it would be the individual people sending those things. So if you want to go after anybody with that shit, then it would be the person calling and the person, typing the comments. It has nothing to do with John Oliver. It is funny, though. "Eat shit, Bob." "Eat shit, Bob." And then just hanging up. Murray Energy said that after the John Oliver Show, its website was attacked 3 different times, who attempted to crash it, but then they said on the 3rd attempt, Murray Energy just took down the website to implement new security measures. So there were some comments, but they also said that they tried to crash it, so maybe that DODD, denial of service, maybe they're trying to do something like that. They got numerous harassing phone calls, right? So, and then like I said before, they are totally making a big to-do about he's a 77-year-old citizen in ill health. He's dependent on an oxygen tank for survival, for God's sakes. He's 77, and he's sickly, and he can barely move with an oxygen tank. Yes, he's still the boss of this big ass, you know, I don't know, publicly traded, I don't know, the nation's largest privately held coal company. So he's got the biggest coal company in the U.S. He's still the CEO. He's still competent enough to make these decisions, but because John Oliver said some bad things about him, oh, now he's just a 77-year-old citizen in ill health, depending on the oxygen tank. Well, it sounds like it's time for you to retire. It sounds like you can't handle somebody, you know, talking about you. And again, this is just Bob Murray digging this hole worse and worse. This would be great, actually, for John Oliver for ratings, and I think he should actually explore our judicial system, especially if he sees shenanigans happening. But usually shenanigans happen against poor people. So he's got lawyers and he's got money, so he might actually get a fair trial, a fair hearing on his situation. Now, they're making a big deal about him being old, you know, and they said they did this to a man who needs a lung transplant, a man who does not expect to live to see the end of this case. He won't even be able to live to see the end of this case that you started. So that's what Bob Murray is fucking up. He fucked up when they're asking him questions. Just be honest. Just be forthright and say this is what's going on. You know, some questions might be real annoying. There's this one journalist. He was talking to Qatar's foreign minister, and I remember him interviewing Jill Stein. I don't know the guy's name, Al Jazeera reporter, but he is such a dick. He's such an asshole. He's like basically mocking Qatar. He's like, but nobody says you're a democracy. He's like, well, we have our democracy, but nobody says you're a democracy. So he was like laughing at him, basically talking to him real shitty. But that's sort of what reporters do. They kind of push back on it, right? It was like, nobody says it. And the guy was like real calm and cool, and he was just kind of like, you could tell he was, you know, a little bit annoyed by it. But that's what reporters are supposed to try to do, is push a little bit. Now, Bob Murray has such thin skin, so John Oliver had expected a lawsuit to happen. He runs the show. He mocked him a little bit, but he says a bunch of facts, too. So, you know, it could have just been, if Bob Murray just would have answered the questions or whatever, it could have been just a short little, you know, maybe a blip. But now, because he immediately signs the cease and desist letter, so cease and desist, he's a fascist. He thinks he could do no wrong. He's got, what, 3,300 wage slave kissing his ass, a bunch of yes men agreeing with everything he says. His hatred for Obama just feels disgusting. It's unmitigated, almost white supremacist-like. Like, I hate that Obama. God, I hate him. Well, that's a weird, visceral, you know, from your bones hatred. Are you sure it's just about the regulations? In fact, he admits, Bob Murray, that the jobs aren't coming back. That it's you know, not just the regulations, but it's basically the industry. Natural gas is competing, and the jobs, like the 200 jobs when he laid off the workers before Christmas, or the 170 workers that he fired, that he laid off after John Huntsman. John Huntsman was a Republican who ran for governor, but he was the governor of Utah at the time, and he was the one saying that they need to be investigated. So Bob Murray pulls out of Utah. 170 Utahns get their jobs cut because he had a beef with the governor. So he doesn't give a shit about the fucking coal miners. He doesn't give a shit about the coal miners. They're his fucking wage slaves. He'll pay them, you know, whatever the lowest he could get away with. He acts like he's this big champion, this big hero for America. He's only out for himself, and he's a fucking liar. He pretends, you know, that retreat mining he wasn't even using. So, and then he also says Murray's health grew worse after Oliver's show aired, likely further reducing his already limited life expectancy due to his idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. So he has an idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and since he's near the end of his life, that means you can't criticize somebody, because if they hear the criticism, they might have a heart attack. I mean, it's like you could pull out Bill Cosby, right? Depending on if he's 50 fucking women have come out and said the same shit. So it's hard to believe that he's not guilty. So just because he got a court to, you know, not do. So I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I'm saying that when you're an old person and someone's coming after your legacy, I can understand why you'd freak out. And but if you did something wrong, then it's not, you know, if the person says the truth, they can embellish the truth. They can try to make one little factoid, one little snippet of information and blow it up to be the biggest, you know, turn a molehill into a mountain. They could try to do that But if it's factually based, I think that they're in the clear. Now, if they're just making up lies, if they're just saying, well, then he did this and then he did this, it's not for a comedic purpose, it's not sarcastic, it's just flat out lies, and then people are believing the lies and then they're acting upon it. You know, like the Pizzagate thing, or like the Glenn Beck did something in California, Tiller, the baby killer. Like, you spread lies and then it encourages other people to do it. I think you're responsible for that behavior then. If I was to tell, if somebody came up to me and told me, you know, so-and-so did something and it deserved, you know, violence, and I wouldn't just beat the person up, and then it comes to find out that, you know, the original person that told me what was going on, that story was bullshit, I think that person should take, you know, some culpability for what just happened. You know, I am acting upon faulty information. Had I not got that information, I wouldn't have done what I did. So I think that person has some culpability to the thing if you're lying and people are, you know, acting based upon your lies. Even then, though, I'm an absolutist when it comes to free speech. And so, you know, people can lie and you're responsible for your own behavior. But, you know, when it comes to the news, when it comes to the truth, I don't know. This is John Peter Zenger. John Peter Zenger. This is media, man. Media freedom. So John Peter Zenger, they went after him. He was like one of the first cases of defense of freedom of the press. And the thing was, he could defend what he wrote by telling it was the truth, and then therefore it was okay. Yeah, you have freedom of the press. You're allowed to criticize those in power. That's what, you know, 300 years ago, that's what the law was. The truth is a defense against libel and slander. But I wonder right now if that's, you know, if that's the case. Could they say that because he had these, you know, distressing, emotional, you know, he's losing life expectancy? That just seems so fucking ridiculous. So John Oliver ran a piece about him and his health just severely declined. So automatically, right, just, that's John Oliver's fault. At first, you gotta prove it. Did that actually happen? Is there a way you could actually tell whether his health declined? They're just asserting this shit. So, I don't know. More coming up.